Today I'm going to make a video on how to turn a piece of firewood into a bowl. It's a two-step process. First you rough in the bowl so that you leave it thick, about an inch or more thickness in the walls of the bowl. Then it has to dry, and that drying period is really 8 months to a year. There's other ways of doing it quicker. You can put it in the oven and kind of kiln dry it. Some guys even put it in the microwave. They can speed the process up. But I found there's just no better way to do it than just to wait a year. You don't get any warpage, and the cracks have already appeared and what's going to be, and you can fix them cracks as they come along. That's what I do. I go through and I rough out a whole bunch of bowls, and I then I set them for a year, and I come back to them later on and make finished bowls. I can't show you a process from start to finish on a single bowl. I'm going to have to rough one out, and I'll show you how to do that. And then I'll take a different bowl that's already dried, and I'll show you how to finish it. The process is the same. It's just I can't show you on one piece of wood start to finish. If I did, it would warp and crack, and it wouldn't be much of a usable bowl. This whole process, it's tough on beginners because they like to see a finished product. I was the same way when I first started. So if that's the case, go ahead and finish the bowl. It'll warp on you and might crack a little bit, but it'll still be a bowl, and it'll give you an idea what's really going on when you're doing it. The first thing I do is take a piece of firewood and I cut it down the middle lengthwise, and maybe nip the corners of it off so it's kind of round. It doesn't have to really be round. For somebody that's a little nervous on a lathe first starting out, you can put it on a bandsaw or even use a chainsaw if you're careful. You can make it sort of round so it's not pounding away on the lathe. But it's not really necessary. If you use good sharp tools, you can bring that down in just a minute or two, and it'll be pretty round. So I'm gonna show you how to do that now. It's pretty gnarly, pretty nasty. I'm not gonna get a very big bowl out of it, but I like cedar bowls. They're pretty when they're done, and they smell like a pencil. So if you can picture this as half of a piece of firewood, I ripped it down the middle, and I just took the bandsaw and nipped the corners off it. Now I'm going to mount the faceplate, and the whole reason of this video is to show you that you don't need fancy equipment to be able to do a bowl. A faceplate pretty much always comes with the lathe when you buy it, so you have that. And other than that, all you need is some screws. You can get different pieces of equipment that'll do different things. This is a bit that, as you turn this, these things go out or in, depending on which way you turn it. And this thing can collect something like this from the outside, or you can squeeze it on the inside. And a lot of guys will take a bowl and they'll rough it out, and then they'll turn it around and they'll make a dado in the back of the bowl that these things can sit in, and they expand and it holds it, and then they can finish the bowl that way. There's nothing wrong with doing that. These bits are very expensive, and they take time to set up. They take time to do the dado, they take time to set up. I don't do that. I just use a faceplate. And for a beginner, he has a faceplate. It's a way for them to make a bowl, and I do it myself all the time because I can do it much faster with a faceplate. So I don't bother with the other equipment. I have it all. I have a couple of them. I don't bother with it because it takes too much time. If I'm going to make a bowl and I want to sell it for $30 or $40, I don't want to put 4 or 5 hours into it. I'm working for nothing then. So I do it as quickly as I can, and with with as little fooling around as possible to get a finished bowl so that I can sell it for a reasonable price and still make some money on it. So now what I'm going to do is mount this faceplate on this piece of wood, and it doesn't have to be exactly centered because there's nothing really, it's all weird. So get it sort of to the center and just screw it in. The screws I'm using are about 1 inch long, so they're going into this wood about 1/2 inch. And like I said, this is not going to make a very big bowl. This is going to be small and it's going to be shallow. You have to keep in mind when you're finished, you got these screw holes in the bottom that you don't want in the bottom of the bowl. So you're going to eliminate 1/2 inch or more of wood on the bottom of this. So this is going to be a small, shallow bowl. But it'll be cool because cedar always looks cool when it's turned. Then you just fasten this, screw this onto your lathe. When it comes time to buy a lathe, if you haven't got one already, you don't have to have a big one like this. I have a small one that I take to shows, and I'll rough out some bowls and make a lot of sawdust fly, and everybody loves it. But I can't carry this machine. This machine weighs hundreds of pounds. So the only thing I would suggest, if you're going to buy a lathe, try to find one that has reverse. And the reason being, when you turn this thing on, this is very slow. You're running your tools on it and you're laying all the fibers down. So when you go to sand, you just keep laying them fibers down. But if you stop, you put it in reverse, now you're picking them fibers back up when you go to sand. And it makes the sanding process much faster and much better. Sometimes it's really hard to get all them fibers out, and you never really get a totally smooth bowl. So the one thing I would suggest would be to get a bowl that has, to get a lathe that has reverse. Other than that, it doesn't have to be big. If you're not doing big stuff, you don't need to have a big lathe. I do lamps and lamp shades and stuff like that as well as bowls. And that'll be another video. I'll show you how to take a piece of firewood and make a lampshade out of it. All one piece, and actually light penetrates through it. But that's another video. This one's for bowls. So once you get it in, fastened to the lathe, then you want to set your rest so that as you turn the log, everything clears. You don't want that thing hitting that rest. And you're going to start out slow. Mine's variable speed. Now I'm going to speed this up until it starts to shake the machine a little bit. Now I'll speed it up as I get this closer to round. I'm using a bowl gouge. It's a modified bowl gouge, and I use it for most everything that I do. Now when you come into a log like this that's nowhere near round, you have to be very careful that you don't come in too aggressively. So you want to stay back, and you want to just sort of, so you're just sort of catching it. And as this thing gets more and more round, you'll be able to go more aggressive. But to start with, you can see it's catching here, just starting to here. It's not doing anything here. So as it gets more round and you can hear it, it will stop skipping. It'll be a steady sound. You know you're getting closer to round. Now you can see it's catching here again and here. And as I get this more in, I'll be able to move this rest in closer. I'm not quite ready yet for that, but I will be in a minute. I'm running about 1/4 of an inch each time I go in there, and it's starting to catch in different places now. I can now move my rest in a little bit, and again always spin this to make sure that it's not hitting. And I can start to get more aggressive as it gets more round and I pick up speed. And you can still hear that it's skipping, it's not a steady sound, and you can see that it's not round yet. So I'll just keep going. As you can see, we're starting to get pretty much round around the base here. So now we'll start bringing it in on the top. I'm going to bring this rest in a little closer and again check it to make sure it's not hitting. And I'm going to start speeding this up a little more. As you see, I can take a lot more off once it starts getting round. But again, I want to keep checking this. A bowl, I know people think it sounds funny, but a piece of wood will tell you what it wants to be. And what I mean by that is different imperfections in the wood will sometimes determine the shape of the bowl that you're making. This is very high on this side compared to this side. That's going to determine the height. I have to bring this thing down, which I'm going to switch over and do now, because what that does is it'll get it better balanced and I'll be able to be more aggressive with turning. So I'm going to reset my, and again check it. See, that's hitting, so you don't want that. And now I'm going to work this. I'm going to try to make this flat. Basically, you start at the inside, and remember to start with, don't be very aggressive, because that's not even at all. That tapers way in, so I'm going to have to bring this down, but I'm going to have to make it smaller as well. But I'm going to continue to make it flatter. Alright, I'm going to keep going down. I'm going to try to get rid of most of this part. And then I'm going to do a compromise to try to get this part and this part so that this is round. I'm going to reset a little bit closer. You want to be set so that when you put your tool on there, on the rest, that you're sort of, see, this is a little low. You want to be sort of like hitting the middle, and you can see the middle right there. So I'm going to raise this up just a touch. You don't want it in the middle because the tool, see, now I have to work down in order to get it. So you want to get that adjusted reasonably so that you're kind of going in straight and kind of in the middle. There, now I'm going to turn back to the side and bring this thing down in a little bit. It's going to be a pretty small bowl when it's done. At this point, I'm starting to shape the bowl to the shape I want it. So I've almost got rid of this, but not quite. And I don't have to totally get rid of it into stage, because when I bring it in later and put it back on the lathe, I'll be trimming off quite a bit. All right, now I still want to take this down this way, and then I'll hollow it out. So I'll switch the rest around to the front, get a little closer. And I'm going to start at the center and work my way out. And I want to leave that about an inch thick. Now what you have to keep in mind, this here will fix later on when I finish this bowl. You have to keep in mind that you have screws coming into here. So this bowl is actually gonna finish somewhere like right here. So I can't go any deeper than I am, or it'll interfere later. So basically this bowl is ready to dry and return at another point. And things like this, I'm not gonna worry about it, because I'm gonna fix that when I do the final bowl. And this is going to be a tiny bowl, but it's cedar and it's cool. So that's end of phase one. All right, now we're to the finishing part. I'm going to take this bowl blank here that you can see it's like an inch thick. This has been sitting for well, probably pretty close to a year and a half. You can see where the faceplate used to be on it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to remount the faceplate on this, but I'm not going to use the same holes that were in there. Them holes would be weakened. I don't know if you can see that, but this bowl is not round, and you'll see that once it goes on the lathe. But I'm going to put the faceplate back on it. And again, I'm going to try to get this thing centered, although it's oval. It's longer this way than it is this way. So it doesn't have to be exactly. You can spend a lot of time. It doesn't really mean much. I like a faceplate that has a lot of holes. This one has 8. If you're using short screws, you can use a whole bunch of them instead of just, some of them only have like 4. The more you can put in there, they don't have to be quite as long. When you put it in, you want to make sure that this plate pulls down as tight as it can to this wood. See, otherwise it'll start to loosen up. And now I'm going to turn this on and show you. This one actually isn't too bad, but you can see that it's not running. It's not round. But it's not terrible. I've seen them a lot worse. So what it means is I can start this one out at fairly high speed. And what I'll do first, make sure it's not hitting any place. What I'll do first is I'll flatten this off. Because that's going to determine where I can start with my bowl here. So I don't want to start. I generally like not to have a straight wall. I like to make some sort of little decorative hump here or something, little lip, something different on every bowl. But I like to be able to do that. I can see right here that we're going to have a little bit of a problem with this. But we can probably fix that. So what I'll do is I'll straighten this off. Then I know where I'm starting with my bowl, and that's what I'll do first. I like to wear gloves while I'm doing this. Because when you really get ripping into a bowl, sometimes them filings coming off of there can sting. Now you can tell when this thing is flat because it's shaved all the way around. You can see that it's hitting every place. You can also hear it. It's a steady flow. Another way to tell is just to hold your tool against it. If there was any real high spots or low spots, you'd hear it bouncing, like this. So now that I have that flat, now I'll swing around and I'll shape the bowl the way I want it. And I do the outside first, because if you do the inside and then the outside has a bad spot on it, you may have already taken too much. So you want to do the outside first. I'm going to see if I can do this so I'm not blocking the camera. My shop is really small. I'm getting ready to build a new house and I'll have a new shop when I do that. But for now, I got what I got. That really didn't take a whole lot to round that up. But we still have this little thing here I'm going to have to get rid of. So I'm going to take it down a little bit more. We got to keep in mind we have these screws coming in. So we're only going to be able to go to about here with this bowl. So this stuff I don't care about. That's going to stay on the lathe when I'm done. Now, I got rid of most of that, so I'll take this down on the front and get rid of the rest of it. I really don't want to make the bowl any smaller than I have to. Okay, that pretty much got rid of that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the final shape that I have on the bowl. And like I said, I like to, just a personal thing, I like to make a little bit of a rounded lip, kind of a hump on there. And it ends up being different on every bowl, but now at this point, I'm gonna rough sand this outside and get it shaped to just the way I want it. So I'm gonna move this out of the way. At this point, I have this dust collection system. The problem is it's really loud, so I'm not going to use it for the video just because I won't be able to talk over it. This is 80 grit sandpaper. It's kind of a screen paper. When you're doing things like natural edge bowls where you're doing it green, this doesn't fill up so much as regular sandpaper. I'm going to put this dust mask on to keep the dust down on me. Keep me from breathing too much of it. Now before I told you about reversing, now is when I'm going to reverse this for sanding reasons. Now I've got the bowl rough sanded on the outside to what the shape of the bowl is going to be. So now I can gouge out the inside of the bowl. And finish the whole bowl. Oh, I want to put that back on forward. This cherry actually works very nicely. And because of what I took on the outside, I don't really have to do a whole lot on the inside. Now when you do a bowl, it's good to try to keep the thickness of the wall consistent. It helps keep it from cracking. But this is pretty dry wood. I don't anticipate it's going to crack. But I can feel that until I get down to the bottom where it flares out a little bit. But that's okay because I'm going to be parting this off down in here. So really, the bowl is done as far as the actual lathe work. Now I got to sand it. As you can see, going. Now you can see that sanded out pretty good. I got a little bit left in here. And this bottom needs a little bit more. Okay, that's pretty good. Now I'm going to start getting into finer grit paper. Alright, so next I'm going to go down to 120 grit. And I'll work my way down to 600. And this lathe is now in reverse, the opposite of what it would normally be. And it sands very nicely. Now I'll go to 240. So I went to 80 to 120, now to 240. Towards the end, I put this baby up as high as it'll go, as fast as it can go, because it kind of polishes it as well as sanding. Now I'm down to 600. As you can see, it's still sanding. When I get done with this, it'll be pretty smooth. And actually, at this point, I'm going to turn this paper over. I'm going to use the back side of this paper to more or less kind of polish it. You can see it's starting to take a shine. Alright, I think we got her. At this point, I'm going to take a little mineral oil. Just a little bit of mineral oil on a rag. And go at slow speeds. And I'll just put a little bit of mineral oil on it. You want to be careful running a rag around something that's turning like this, that it don't catch on something. But keeping in mind that these screws are coming in here, you got to part this bowl off from this faceplate. And I know by sticking this in there, I know that the depth of my bowl is actually right in here. So I can come down into here and I should miss them screws and part this off. This is a parting tool. It's meant to cut a slot into wood. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in at a very slight angle so that it makes the bottom of the bowl concave. So it's only really hitting on the very outside when you set it down. Now when you start getting down to the end, you want to watch that bowl. If it starts to wobble, it means you're starting to get loose and you want to be careful. And you go in more than the depth, more than the width of this knife so it doesn't bind on you. You don't have to go too full, but but you want to go more than just the width of that. Otherwise it'll start to bind. You'll see me pull back and go into the second one after a little bit. You can see that bowl starting to wobble a little bit. So I'm going to check it. Not quite ready to come off, but it's very close. There. Now you see the bottom here, I just sand that off with a pad sander. And oil that up, and then it's finished. Now I'll just put a little bit of oil on that bottom, and it'll be fine. Okay, I'll just drop a little oil on that. Kind of hand rub it in a little bit. And there you have it. A finished bowl. All with just a faceplate. So that's it. Thank you for watching. Here's just a small sample of some of the bowls that I've made. I've made many, many more than this. I put a coffee cup in the middle of the table just to give you an idea of the size of these bowls. Again, this is just a small sampling. Got some pretty good sized bowls. Got one natural edge bowl. This bowl right here.